Can you believe this was me at the beginning of the year? Well, I definitely can't. So little and so much has changed since that point. New Year's is my favorite holiday of the year, so I was thinking what better time to talk about what I've learned. So here are three takeaways from this year that I hope to take in 2024, which I hope would be useful for any current or aspiring game developers. So one of the most major time savers for me was sticking with a simple, consistent art style. Normally, I look at my window during road trips or at other artists for inspiration when it comes to background art, but I tend to notice that I get caught up in the details a lot. I'm truly starstruck when I see the beautiful shading and color palettes of so many artists online. But given my skill set, I realized that I could not just compete. Before, a scene that should have taken me just a few hours to complete would take me days. I realized it's because I was focusing too much on small pixels, not consistently shading objects, or even trying to match up to the art that I saw online. Then I realized the fix to this. And again, this could depend on the kind of person you are. So for me, I added a section to my design document called Standard Practices, which detailed things like shading brushes to use for my art, color palette screenshots, and even like reusable assets. In this way, I have a constant reminder to stick with a specific brush at first, or even reuse an existing asset I've created, so I'm not spending extra time erasing and redoing a section of my background. On a side note, while I'm no artist, through this process, I realized that simpler art styles can still be beautiful and captivating. As long as consistency is applied, any art style can work really well. So, the second thing that was useful for me was KISS. Not the kind that's given during New Year's, but the acronym for Keep It Simple, Stupid. I mainly applied this principle for my user interface choices. For context, I have temporarily switched gears to creating a smaller point and click game. So, as an example, instead of clicking on an object and then choosing interactions to apply onto that object, I made it such that hovering over any object gives a small description at the bottom, and clicking on it yields some dialogue or a pickup interaction. Even when polling users across social media, I realized that the simple cursors and UI boxes were getting way more votes. Quite a few people mentioned that a simpler UI does not clog, distract, overload, or confuse the players, in turn making the game more enjoyable. And this is definitely a win win situation, since I would have to spend less time designing these objects as well. The last thing I did want to highlight is asking for help. And I know this is something I mentioned in a few of my previous videos, but I really wanted to emphasize this one. I don't know if others feel this way, but sometimes I really want to figure things out by myself so that I can be like, hey, I did this by myself, yay! When in reality, the goal is to finish the game as quickly and nicely as possible. This differs from person to person, but I've personally come to the conclusion that if I spend more than 1 hour trying to figure something out, it's time to ask for help. As an example, I'm using the Adventure Creator plugin to build my game. For a specific UI or settings question, if I don't find it in the manual, I make sure to post on the forum to get an answer as quickly as possible. Major shout out to Chris and the Point and Click Discord community, by the way, who have kindly been helping me with all my questions. So, the other reason for asking for help is to get continuous feedback. Apart from trying to build an audience for my video game, I want to see how I can improve the art, the UI, and the dialogue so that it's more aesthetically pleasing and easier for players to navigate. So if I do this through the process of creating my game, it'll be much easier at the end so that I won't have to revisit several things during the testing phases. And one last thing, I did want to thank my parents, my friends, and my audience for supporting me physically, mentally, and emotionally through this journey. I know I have Solodev in my bio, but sometimes I feel like this is a misnomer since creating this game would not be possible without the help of all of you. So I think that pretty much wraps up the main things I've learned. For those in the January 1st part of the world, Happy New Year! For those who are in later time zones like me, Happy New Year's Eve! Either way, let's make this year count. Thank you for sticking with me for another trip around the sun. Looking forward to seeing you in the next. Take care!